Welcome back, and you've just watched that video on if ethics matter. Hopefully that's helped you confirm your thoughts and ideas on that sort of topic, but generally it's just good background, I thought, on what ethics is and how it's all about business. She gave some good examples of unethical sort of issues or practices that have gone on recently, and they've happened in a corporate world where somebody has made a decision. That decision has led to it, and we need to ensure our decisions can stand up to scrutiny. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So the speaker also set out what ethics were. Ethics are all about what is acceptable, and that could be to do with the environment, people, morals, values. It's all about moral principles, doing what is morally good, what is correct, and ensuring that our decisions do not culminate or involve activities or other organisations that are going to harm people or the environment. And when I say environment, that could be the world environment, or it could be the environment we're operating within, our sector. It's not going to be easy because we need to balance the ethics and the values of the organisation with the ethics and values of our stakeholders, and that could include customers, and of course balance it with our own values and beliefs while still doing our job. Ethical considerations in decision making involves thinking about the balance of the impact of the actions, so our outcomes and decisions, on the individuals and the institutions that we're involved in. While lots of decisions are just routine, we're going to come up with some major significant problems that may involve decisions where we're faced with an ethical dilemma. And when these situations occur, we're going to suddenly or rapidly have to make an immediate decision, and that can be especially difficult. So in making our decisions, we've got to take account of what are the good ones or the good options for the situation or problem we're facing. And again, that's down to the nature, scope and impact that we talked about being sure of. But we have to include thinking ethically, because overall, thinking ethically is good for our organisation. In deciding or making those ethical decisions, we need to consider a question, and that is, what would a reasonable person do in this situation? But that's quite simplistic. And in tougher situations, we might use some questions raised by the 3 rules of management. Firstly, the rule of private gain. Who's gaining? If you or your organisation are the ones personally benefiting from the outcome of the decision, is it at the expense of others? If it is, then you may benefit from looking at the ethics of your decision before you go ahead. Secondly, if everyone does it, what would the world look like? Who would be hurt? What would happen? These questions can help you identify unethical behaviour. And thirdly, it's about the benefits versus the burden. So if it does bring benefits, are they outweighed by the burden it's going to put? So for example, if you're saying, well, it's definitely going to benefit us, and the other 2 aren't really going in your favour, do they balance out? And can you ethically and morally go with that decision? So what types of decisions will ethics and values have more impact on? Well, think about when we were talking about our stakeholders. When people work more closely together on a project or as close stakeholders, the people or the individuals tend to take on the common or core values of the group. When that relationship is not so close, they'll stick with their own ethics and values, and will need to be aware of them and their presence and importance. Remember, that's when we'll be using our stakeholder mapping, where we were determining how much impact or how much we wanted that relationship with them, and we'll need to use that in our consideration. But when we're in a close group of individuals, they'll be prepared to compromise their own values and accommodate compromise, as we talked about before, to maintain that cohesion in the negotiation. And when we're doing that, we'll better use those 3 rules of management we talked about and discuss them, and decide in the group if we're meeting our values, if our decision's ethical, and if it's in line with everybody's thoughts. So in thinking about the impact of our decision, things have changed. As we identified in Unit 502, Building Relationships, and in the last slide, stakeholder relationships and collaboration is much more part of business nowadays. And that, along with the fact that public perception, worldview, and shareholders, who we have to take account of, have more of a focus on the ethical nature of organisations now. It's much more of a consideration. We need to think about it as much as we do, if not more, than profit and loss, and the impact on our reputation and integrity. So, when considering the impact of our decisions, here are some questions we can use to check. Are we protecting employee and customer rights? Are we making sure all operations are fair and just? Are we protecting the common good? Have we minimised the impact on the environment and the community? And finally, are we making sure that individuals' values and beliefs of workers are protected and considered? And if we can check these questions and then we can answer yes, great, we know we've made a good ethical decision. Right then, we'll just start drawing this unit to a close before we do an activity. We'll recap. Our aim was to understand problem solving and decision making techniques. And we said by the end of the session you should be able to explain the importance of clearly understanding the nature, scope and impact of a problem, and I think we looked at that and you did it in an activity. Explain the relationship between problem solving and decision making. We looked at the differences, and I think throughout the session we've then highlighted where they fit together. Said we would evaluate the different techniques used for problem solving and decision making. We've looked at some examples of both, and then you've started to look at them in your activity, part 2 I think it was, and then we've said assess the impact and organisational ethics and values on decision making. We've just discussed it, we've gone through it, we've looked at some examples and watched the video, and then we're going to do an activity in a second which gets you to look at it on your example. So let's have a look at the activity. So this is part 3 of the one you've already done. You've uploaded parts 1 and 2, and you should have kept a copy so you can fill in part 3 and then upload that. It asks you to explain the process used, and particularly focusing on in the relationship between decision making and problem solving, outlining the techniques that have been used and evaluating their suitability or their or options you could use if they weren't suitable, and finally assess the impact of ethics and values on the decision. So just bringing together really the things that we've been talking about. So you do part 3 and upload that, and then we'll have a look at what you can do after that. So you get your activity uploaded, and then there are a couple of things you can do before you move on to the next unit. I want you to review the unit evidence guidance sheet that's attached. So this is where you've got to produce evidence to show that you've been using problem solving techniques in your everyday work, real instances. And the focus on there, it's in the detail, but I want to just go through is it needs to be a new problem. So it can't be reflecting on something you've dealt with before, as we've just done in your activity. And it's got to be of a substantial nature. By that, I mean it's got to be a level 5 problem. It can't just be a quick little problem about, oh, someone needs a day off or we haven't got enough staff for tomorrow. It's got to be a substantial problem where there is going to be some analysis, collection of data, and then you're going to come up with a number of viable options to be chosen from. It needs to be something that can be completed before the end of this qualification as well. So it can't be it's got to be substantial enough, but it's got to be something that's going to be done over the next few months and would fit into the qualification. And if you're thinking, oh, I don't know what, it's probably going to fit within 3 of the next units we're going to do. We've got 3 units, one on operational management, which talks about writing an operational management plan and putting it into practice. There's another one on project management where you've got to control a project, and then there's a final one on finance where you've got to control your budgets. Now, the chances that you're not going to come up against a significant problem in one of those 3 areas is really not going to happen, I don't think. So hopefully it'll be within one of those areas. But have a look at the sheet, make some notes, and then discuss it with your assessor.